Welcome to Art at Home from the Franklin Park Public Library. I'm Laura, and today we will be doing 5 fantastic watercolor paintings. A rainbow in the rain, flowers in a field, a polar bear on an iceberg, a city scene, and planets in space. And why are we doing watercolor today? We're doing it in celebration of World Water Day, which is on Monday, March 22nd this year. So what that is what is World Water Day? Well, what it is bringing awareness to the fact that there's actually 2.2 billion people on this planet who do not have access to clean water. And this is a very complex issue. And one of the most important things that we can do is to conserve water and to continue to learn and understand what is going on, and also to learn what can be done about it and how we can contribute, even in our own small ways, to help. So some of the shortage of water is caused by climate change, the planet getting warmer, um, things being drier in some areas, and some things are political. And so um, here is the website called worldwaterday.org. And this is the force behind this movement. And I would invite you to check this website out and just take a look at it and read about it and learn about everything that's being done to try to help those people so that they can have access to clean water and to resources. Okay, thank you for that, and let's get started. So when you get started with painting your watercolors, you're going to want to have water, paper towels, a white crayon, other crayons, extra paper, your cardstock, and your watercolor paper, paintbrush, pencil. Um, Use your pipette and put water and fill up water in each of the colors. And this will make them soft, and you'll be able to use a lot of color from these once these are nice and wet. You want to fill it up to the top of the circle with water and let it sit for about a minute. Next, I'm gonna show you by using a regular pencil on a scratch piece of paper. You're gonna be drawing this on the cardstock using a white crayon. So basically, you're gonna draw a nice line across the top part there. That's the horizon line. Draw where the rainbow comes in. Draw really lightly. You're going to be using a white crayon to do this, not a pencil. I'm just showing you the marks because when I do it in crayon, you can't see very well. So you draw a large spiral at the bottom and some dashed lines going up to the top. And that is the rain and the rain splashing into the water. And then keep doing that as you go back. And make the spirals smaller as you start going back. And that'll make it look like it's getting farther away. So when you have large items towards the bottom of the paper, that makes it look like it's closer. The bigger things, the lower on the page, looks like it's closer. And then as you go farther back, make the spirals get smaller and smaller. So if you can see the pencil marks, that's what you're going to do with white crayon. So then we put in the white cardstock paper, and I have taped it with tape. So you can tape it with tape on the edges, and that will help the paper to keep flat if you're using a lot of water, which you do with watercolor. That's one of the coolest things about watercolor. So if you want to tape it onto a tray or something, that would be very helpful around the edges. Here we are drawing the line that's the horizon with the white crayon, and going back and forth, making kind of a very, very solid, thick line with the white crayon. That's why I showed you with the pencil first, because you really can't see it on the video, but it is there. We're starting to draw the rainbow using red first. Coloring really hard and going over it, maybe 2, 3 times over and over and over. This is called, for watercolor technique, this is called wax resist. Wax. The crayon is made out of wax, and resist, it's resisting the water from the watercolor. So the crayon will show up nice and bright because the watercolor will not be able to go through towards the paper. So the crayon is blocking the watercolor paint from going to the paper. Orange is next, as you can see. Rainbows go in a pattern. They go red, orange, next will be yellow, and then green, blue, violet. If you see rainbows, they always go in that pattern, and that has to do with the physics of light, which is also very interesting. Here's green. Next will be blue. Purple. So be sure to draw in your rainbow and press really hard and go over it a couple of times. You can make your rainbow thicker if you want. I've made kind of a skinny rainbow. Here comes the spirals at the bottom. So kind of a large spiral at the bottom and dashed lines from the center going up. And that is the rain coming down and making a splash into the water. Here's another spiral, rain going up. You can draw rain over the rainbow. Another one. And getting smaller as we go up. So once again, that's the reason why I did this first in pencil. So you don't need to do it in pencil, but you'll need to kind of remember that and draw from that. Or you can look at the picture of the actual painting that's been done, and then you'll know exactly what to do from seeing that. So it really doesn't take that long to do, but you want to press really hard when you're doing this so that you can have the wax resist effect, so that the rain will show up as white. Okay, next we have our paints ready. They're all nice, and there's a lot of water in them, so they're really good for using for the watercolor painting. So watercolor painting, interestingly enough, watercolors are used a lot to actually paint pictures having to do with water. And there's a lot of reasons for that. So first we're going to begin by painting with water, actually getting the paper really wet with water. So you want to have a lot of water, cover the whole thing with water. Now you're starting to be able to see from this the wax resist effect. If you can see some of the reflections, you can see that the water is not going into where the crayon marks are, which is perfect. That's exactly what we want to have happen. Now it's very wet. Now I'm going to begin by putting blue down at the bottom. Comes out really dark, and you can let the water on the paper kind of work for you, and it will spread out for you. This is actually called a wash. Watercolors, that's a prime watercolor technique, is called wash, watercolor wash. Which means exactly this, using a lot of water and kind of thin paint and letting the water move the paint around and painting kind of a large area with a single color and maybe blending in other colors to here I put purple in it, and I'm getting more water from the cup and moving the purple around, mixing the purple in. But the water on the page does a lot of work for you. Now, towards the top of the water, you want it to stay light. And the reason for that, the top of the water, it goes light and then darker, darker, darker down towards the bottom of the page. And what that does is that creates where the bottom area of the page looks closer. And then as you go up higher and it gets lighter, it looks farther away. And we're going to copy that in the sky. We'll make the sky, the top of the sky, look darker, and the area starting to put the paint down, and the water is causing the paint to spread and move around. You're starting to see the raindrops in the sky coming down from the sky from the wax resist, making it a little bit darker. So I'm going to make the sky be lighter than the water. I'm using the same blue and maybe a little bit of purple towards the top, and making it the lightest at the bottom of the rainbow will be the light area, because that is what is kind of furthest away. I'm mixing paint on the lid of the paint box, which is actually kind of what that's for. So using that to mix it, I have a white sheet of paper underneath, which helps me to see what it is. And maybe I'll even test it on the scratch paper. I've made kind of a aqua, mixing green and blue together. And I'm going to mix that into the water to make it look, kind of like a sea green, give the water a different color. If you look, as you know, when you look at water, it has all different kinds of colors in it. It's not just one color, and it changes depending on the way the sky is, if it's a dark day. So that's why watercolor works really well for painting water, is because it has a lot of water in it, and you can blend the colors very easily. And it has it can be very light in some areas. So here you see the swirls. That's the splash of the rain hitting the water, and you can see the larger ones towards the bottom. The darker you get towards the bottom, the closer it looks, and the more the swirls stand out. So that's actually starting to look really good. Kind of adding a little bit more to make the water stand out from the sky. Now taking a paper towel, maybe lifting up a little bit, it makes some more texture using that, kind of blotting it off. So you can take off, if you put on too much, you can take it off while it's still wet. You can kind of make changes while it's still wet. Put a little bit of green in the sky, about the area where it is in the water. They're kind of mirrors of each other. A lot of the times you see the sky reflected in the water, so that's kind of what is happening here. This is kind of what this looks like too. I drew a line across with the aqua green, the blue-green color, kind of adding some water and blending that. Maybe taking it off a little bit, maybe making it a little bit more light, a little lighter. Watercolors have a tendency to dry a little bit lighter than how they look when they're wet. And there, that looks good. That looks finished. Looks like it's good. So we'll leave the tape on it until it dries, completely dries. And then taking the tape off carefully, tearing it slowly and carefully at an angle away from the painting, but waiting until it dries. The next painting is a field of flowers, landscape format. So we'll begin with our taped down cardstock. Making sure, so we have the sky, so making sure that our paint is nice and has a lot of water in it. We're going to be using plastic wrap for the sky. Kind of crumple it up a little bit. And salt. So to draw the grass in, we're using the white crayons. We're using wax resist again. So draw really hard, draw grass with the white crayon. Start from the bottom and go up to the top, to the middle of the page. I'm using a little yellow as well. So you can see the yellow, just a little bit, less than the white. Now beginning to paint. So we're going to have this be darker on the bottom, use green, and have it be pretty dark. You can see the wax resist there. You can see the, and use water and get lighter towards the top. Towards the top of the grass and the flower stems. So putting a lot of green, starting with the bottom and putting green at the bottom. Adding some yellow. The yellow will lighten the green and make it kind of a yellow-green, kind of a spring color. So we're using a lot of water when we do this. You can also use the paintbrush to draw grass. And making it darker towards the edges and also darker towards the lower corners. And that makes it look closer. It makes the bottom of the page look closer to you, just like with the water. When you go lighter up towards the middle and top, it looks farther away. And now we'll start working on the sky. And you can see the effect of the watercolor. It looks kind of windy. Now you want to avoid having the sky touch the top of the grass right now because the colors will blend together when it's wet. So we're first painting with water in the sky area, being careful not to touch the wet yellow grass, the top parts of the grass, just only in the sky, swirling some water around. Next we're going to add a little bit of blue. Testing it, trying to make it light. You want the sky to be kind of light, not too dark. And just kind of squiggling that in. Now that looks kind of windy. Adding a little bit of purple probably towards the top, mixing a darker blue. Adding purple to blue will make it darker. Making it darker towards the top. And using kind of a squiggly pattern when I move the brush, kind of squiggling that in. If you mix blue with green, it will make the green darker. Just like if you mix purple with blue, it will make the blue darker. So here we have the grassy field and the sky. Maybe blot some more in. If you add dots of paint and then paint water over it, you can pull those dots around and spread that paint out. Kind of darken some areas of the sky. Add a little bit of salt on the sky, and that will give it an interesting texture. You'll be able to see this when you do this on your own. It's hard to see in the video what happens, but the salt kind of sucks up the water, and it makes a really interesting pattern. Interesting effect. Sometimes it can look like snow, sometimes kind of crystally. Let's see. So we want to let this dry and then add flowers, maybe spatter paint on top. But we're going to let it dry before we add the flowers. Okay, now that this is dry, we've waited for it to dry. Now we can begin adding the flowers. So we've got a dark red and an orange, and we'll use that and just start with the orange and start painting in some flowers towards the top of the grass and the stems. Just kind of blot it in large. So maybe there's some larger flowers. So let's see. We've got 5. Taking some of the really dark red. Kind of adding that to the center of the orange flowers. You know how flowers have kind of different colors to them? Those are starting to look kind of like the flower poppies. And now maybe just taking the brush and just like tapping it on in different places and making smaller flowers. Maybe the flowers are kind of shaped like how the brush is. Mixing in a little yellow and adding more. Now spatter painting. Load up your brush with a lot of wet paint and hit it on your finger, and then it'll splatter over. We're trying to get it on to the grass. Try to avoid getting it up in the sky, but that's okay if it does. And that makes little dots all over, and those could be like some of the tiny flowers, some wild flowers that appear in there. So it's spatter painting. There maybe add some really large ones towards the bottom. And that looks good. So there we have it, our field of flowers. If you ever add too much paint, if you feel like it's too dark, take a paper towel, a piece of one, and kind of take some off. And there we go, our field of flowers. And wait until this is dry before we take off or do it now, and just kind of tear it away at an angle slowly. Oh yeah, the sky and the grass are dry, the flowers are wet, but this is kind of how you do it. You want to tear off the tape very slowly and tear it at an angle. Okay, so this is our field of flowers, and be sure to keep watching this playlist to see how to paint the polar bear on iceberg, the city scene, and the planets in space. Okay, thank you.